Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you so much for tuning in to our episode number 2, the MRE, My Retention Experience. We're so excited to get into our second episode, and we're going to have some fantastic leaders on with us tonight. We're going to bring the DMPM Sergeant Major, the Command Policy Sergeant Major, and the Uniform Policy Sergeant Major. We're all going to get together, have a meal together, and just talk about these different leadership roles that soldiers don't usually get to see the face behind the position. It's going to be awesome, building some transparency. And as you guys know, after seeing our first show, we love to, break bread together, have a meal together, because my favorite memories as a career counselor was when we were in the field and you hit chow time. Because chow time was when those real and those honest and those raw conversations happened. And it didn't matter who was who, but you just had a great time and you got down to business with whatever you're talking about. So tonight with those topics, we're going to bring on our guests. I'm going to, let's go ahead and bring them on. So tonight we have Sergeant Major Jonathan Uribe. He is the DMPM Sergeant Major. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight. We've got Sergeant Major Basil, the Uniform Policy Sergeant Major, and we've got Master Sergeant Johnson, our Command Policy Sergeant Major. So with you guys, thank you so much for being here. I did send you guys a little something before the show. And hopefully you did not open it yet. So when I cue you guys in, what I would like you to do is go ahead and show the audience what you got. And then while you're prepping it, I'd like to know, what was your very first retention experience? It could be anything. It could be your first reenlistment ceremony. It could be a time you helped a soldier. It could be just talking to the career counselor, the retention NCO. You let us know. But Sergeant Major Uribe, we're going to go ahead and start with you.
All right. So first of all, thank you. Really appreciate you all giving me this opportunity. Anytime that, we can connect with the team out there in the Army, it's a great time. I really appreciate it. So to show that, I'm part of the team here, seal has not been broken. Okay.
Very nice.
And here we go. Right. Now, I want to preface this by saying that one of my favorite experiences, just like you mentioned before, was chow time. And I spent a lot of time in the field throughout my career. And I will tell you, I have not come across an MRE that I didn't love. It was delicious. So,
Sergeant Major, those are strong words.
Delicious. I mean, I'm gonna tell you, I'm a hardcore charger. Let's see what we got here. So vegetable crumbles with pasta and taco style sauce. All right, so
I heard that one is one of the best.
There you go. So, here it says, let me see, warfighter tested, warfighter recommended, and warfighter approved. So I would say, this is great here. And as I think back to one of my retention experiences, and honestly, I would tell you my first experience was rather quick, to be honest with you, because it was one of those where I didn't know that I was going to make this much more than my initial enlistment. So it kind of snuck up on me pretty quick. But I would tell you that I made that decision at the top of Pikes Peak in Colorado. I was stationed at Fort Carson. And the story leading up to this was I got an opportunity to go overseas to Germany, and I had to re-enlist for it. Right? It was one of those decisions where it was like, hey, great opportunity. Was fortunate enough to also have a promotion tied into it. And it was a packing list. It was hey, we're going to promote you on time. We're going to re-enlist you, U.S. flag, all this kind of great stuff. And I show up in the morning, and I'm the only one with the rucksack filled with the packing list, and everyone else was in comfortable attire.
Oh,
and
no.
We made our trek up to Pikes Peak 3.5 hours later. Looking at the peak from the ground, you saw little patches of white, little dusty powder, and I thought, it doesn't look that bad. But when you're actually on ground, it was immense. But my experience there with a great teammate was, being able to have that experience to, enlist, continue my career, see something new, kind of, you sign up in the Army. One of the things is like traveling to see the world. So I was able to see that as well, and kind of continue my career. So that's my my initial reenlistment experience. With the with one of the high speed career counselors out there with Fourth ID.
I love to hear it, Sergeant Major. That's a fantastic story. All right, while you get your MRE set up there, let's move on over to Sergeant Major Basil. Let's see what you got.
All right, so I will not echo what Sergeant Major Rebay said and say I've never had a bad MRE because that omelet is not good. So if I have the omelet, I don't know the reaction that I would give. So we have hash brown potatoes with bacon, pepper, and onions.
That sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
I haven't had that one yet, but it sounds good.
It's okay. I'll take your word for it. So going towards the retention aspect. So I've never had something that was just, like, jumping out of an airplane, rappelling and re-enlisting during that. But what I will say is I've never had a bad experience with a career counselor. First duty station was Korea, and then after 1 year in Korea, I moved over to this beautiful place called Fort Monroe. It's no longer an installation that the Army has because it turned into kind of a historical location. And after my time at Monroe, I went to the career counselor because it was my time to re-enlist. And the career counselor said, well, you don't have a bonus, so what do you want? So I said to the career counselor, I want a combat patch. So that career counselor took the time to lay out every single location that deployed. And then he didn't just hand it to me and say, okay, pick one. He created pros and cons of every single area and how it fit to my family, what kind of schools they had. I mean, unbelievable job. And that's where I ended up going to 4ID as well. So what I would like to say to everyone that's listening is, if you're not getting a bonus, that's not the end of the world, because there's so many things through a retention aspect that you can do to drive your career, because location and position is going to be far more important than that, because you always want to be happy where you're going. And that career counselor made sure that I was happy. That's probably most memorable retention experience that I had, but that's what I got.
That's pretty awesome, Sergeant Major. And that just, I think that story clearly shows that the impact a career counselor has on somebody. I assume first reenlistment, so probably specialist, maybe sergeant, and here you are, Sergeant Major, the uniform policy Sergeant Major, and you have such a fond experience of a career counselor taking that time to go through those pros and cons with you. That really lasts a lifetime. So that was really special to hear. Yep. All right. Get that lovely MRE set up. And then Master Sergeant Johnson, over to you. Let's see what you got. So far, we've got two pretty good ones.
I'm a little nervous. So
don't be nervous.
Trying to be the third person here. See what we got. Oh, reliable beef stew.
That's my favorite.
Beef stew. So ate many MREs during my last deployment. So unlike Sergeant Major Uribe, I'm not excited about MREs all the time, but it's always a great thing when you get an Army meal. So a little bit about my reenlistment experience. So as a young soldier, I did not know much about reenlistments. My reenlistment experience is a little different. I reenlisted maybe with about 22 months in the Army. I was a very young soldier when I reenlisted. I was sitting at my desk one night. I got a phone call from Staff Sergeant Sean Adams. I wanted to give him a shout out. He just randomly called me one night and was like, hey, would you like to reenlist in the Army? Like I said, didn't know much about reenlistment. I hadn't seen a reenlistment before. I pretty much only knew that people reenlistment either to stay in my unit or to get out of my unit. But he gave me a call that night, and he kind of walked me through what a reenlistment was and kind of what it meant. And I really, really appreciated that because pretty much at that current time, I was getting ready to have a kid on the way. So I was able to actually stay in the Army. So I ended up re-enlisting for 6 years. I got a $10,000 bonus, and yeah, you can say the rest is history. So that little experience with them, that definitely kind of changed the course of the way I saw things. And I really, really enjoyed the Army. So I said, hey, I might as well make it a career. And now I'm eating beef stew with you many years later. So
I love it. That's such a great story too. Yet again, another fantastic story of a career counselor making a difference early on in your career. You're headed to the Sergeant's Major Academy with such fond memories of the career counselor world, and that's awesome. I really appreciate that story. All right, those who tuned in to episode 1, you saw my unfortunate event of spinach fettuccine Alfredo, and my least favorite one. So I'm really hoping this time is better. I have high hopes that I'm gonna pull the golden MRE here. Well, actually not, because Master and Johnson got my all-time favorite. So see what I got. Did it? I think someone else got this one too. Vegetable crumbles with pasta in taco style sauce. I think we got 2. All right. I'm okay with this. I'm pretty happy with this. All right, so now we got MREs settled. Let's go ahead and push into our first segment of the night. We're going to talk to Sergeant Major Uribe about the Directorate of Military Personnel Management. If you've never heard of that, it's okay. Because, in full transparency, I didn't know what this organization was until I got hired here. And it was a learning experience, but what I can tell you is it's a powerhouse. It is a powerhouse of phenomenal NCOs and phenomenal warrant officers and phenomenal officers. And Sergeant Major Uribe is the DMPM Sergeant Major. So he's killing it. He's running a powerhouse that supports the Army and supports soldiers on a daily basis. And we have him here today to kind of tell us a little bit of what that means. So Sergeant Major, if you wouldn't mind, just letting us know, for those soldiers out there, NCOs out there that don't particularly understand DMPM, if you could fill us in a little bit about what it is and what your role is like with that.
Sure. So in full transparency, I'll also share with you for, a lot of those HR professionals that we have in the AG Corps, they also pretty much have not heard of the Director of Military Personnel Management. When we talk in the human capital domain, you usually always hear HRC, 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 right? That's kind of what's synonymous with, what we experience throughout our life cycle. So HRC is our executive agent that executes the policy that comes from the Army G1. The DMPM is an entity within the Army G1 that executes about 80% of the personnel policy that HRC executes. So if you think about it this way, from an Army G1 perspective, the DMPM is like the G3 of the G1. So within that aspect, I'll kind of break down the divisions because we've recently done a reorganization to kind of streamline how we connect with HRC, how we take in things from the Army G1 and from, the DS Secretariat or from the Army Secretariat staff, DOD. And we realigned it to coincide with the Chief's priorities and the SMA's focus areas. So you have a couple divisions here. So you have now what's called the Acquire and Retain Division. You have an Integration Division. You got an Army Readiness Division. You got Boards and Selection Division. You got Training, which ATARs, so you all should be familiar with ATARs, right? So the proponency for ATARs, specifically when it comes to that system, we're the executive agent within the DMPM for ATARs. And then the Retirement Service Office. So when you think about the Transition Assistant Program, so those are soldiers that are currently going through transition. Once you retire, for those retirees, that Retirement Service Office falls within the DMPM. So when you all go to the PX and you're in clothing cells and you see like the Soldier for Life shirts and all that apparel, all that is done within the office of the Retirement Service office in conjunction with some contracted efforts. So let's get to the so what, right? So what is it that could resonate with the force out there. So when you think about the enlisted evaluation boards, because that should be something we should all be familiar with. So the policy that executes the enlisted evaluation boards comes from the DMPM. So we provide that MOI, or that memorandum of instruction, to the panel and outline specific requirements from an Army level that we're looking to fill and want leaders to assess you all by a merit list that will inform a couple of things. One being readiness, which will tie to a promotion. Another being talent management, which informs the assignments process. One is a selection for professional military education, which will inform how we schedule you to attend PME. And then one is to identify whether or not you're fully qualified. So an up and out system, so retain or identify you as being fully qualified for continued service. So that is our up and out. So those are the 4 things that process informs. That's what your OML is kind of designed for. So the policy on enlisted evaluations rests within the DMPM. The Army's #1 mission sessions that also rests within the DMPM. So all the policy surrounding that, in conjunction with USAREC, in conjunction with MEPCOM, DoD agency, and incentives that are also put in place to incentivize or to offer monetary and non-monetary incentives for those to join the Army. That policy rests within the DMPM. And again, we work very closely with the USAREC enterprise to ensure that we meet those requirements to ensure an all-volunteer force. All policy that has to do with the enlisted and officer side. So on the officer side, they have promotion boards, they have selection boards, they have special boards, and senior service college boards. All that policy rests within the DMPM as well. From the readiness division, when you look at active component manning guidance and how we identify what organizations have a priority, when we identify how many, or the prioritization of recruiters, drill sergeants, special assignments, and special tiered units, all of that is also done within the DMPM. Training requirements. So from a SMDR, or structure and manning decision review, where we identify training seats to meet all COE requirements for our entire Army, that is also done and managed within the DMPM. ATARS, that system of record for training, and that contracted effort that maintains the sustainment of that system, is also done within the DMPM. Here recently, we also have what's called a suitability section. So the suitability division now, that's realigned underneath the MNRA. So ASA MNRA now holds that suitability section. But what they did for us was they pretty much assess screening for those positions of trust or positions of higher authority, to include like CDC workers. Like if you go to your child development centers on installations, those that work there also go through a screening. That is done by that section as well. Within the DMPM, here recently kind of got realigned, but they also have an entity that rests out of Aberdeen Proving Ground. So a set of about 60 to 70 civilians that also conduct that screening. And here, more recently, as we did a assist for our USAREC, battle buddies out there, and we, helped with the surge from the recruiters, we conducted that screening at our level. So outside of HRC, we did it ourselves to expedite that. Again, we have a whole entity that kind of does that for the Army. Command policy. So you'll hear from 2 of the teammates there that do some of the command policy that now will be under the integration division, but you'll hear uniform policy. You'll hear Army command policy. So when you think of AR 600-20, that's in there. You're going to hear a little bit about accommodations, whether medical or religious, for uniform or grooming standards. That process is also done there. And then probably one more thing that you don't think about is mobilization. So we do all the active duty operational support, so ADOS, COIDOS, for those that we bring on to help, man in particular sections. So we do that. And probably one of the most important things to take away from what the DMPM does is a total Army perspective. So we have every single component within the DMPM as integrators. So as we work Army policy, we take a holistic look at Compos 2 and 3, so the Guard and the Reserve, and the impacts and how they actually execute to meet Army readiness requirements. And when we're looking at staffing additional policy, hand in hand, we work with those components to see the impact. So sometimes when you see policy that comes out from a Compo 1 active duty perspective, you'll see an implementation date, usually for the AGR, then followed by, the National Guard. And we kind of spread it out based on how they're able to meet some of those requirements. So again, quick summary, we are the G3 of the G1 that conducts all personnel policy, and HRC executes the policy that we staff within Army leaders.
Sergeant Major, that was a fantastic explanation. I don't think I could have explained that better. I think the G3 analogy is perfect. And I think it fully expresses the amount of work that goes on there from all the different levels. It's phenomenal, really. So we appreciate that. Let's jump into uniform policy. Sergeant Major Basil, we're gonna move over to you, and I'm sure you've got some really interesting things to fill us in on. But
So
before
first,
we get to that, are you heating up your MRE? Are you gonna heat it up? Or are you gonna go
it's down
cold?
here heating up.
What
But
is that drink? What did you get?
this is some neon orange type 3. I don't know what the difference between type 1, type 2, and type 3 is. Maybe diabetes. But this thing is has so much sugar in it. Yeah. So and then I've got granola with milk and blueberries. So I'm guessing it's powdered milk. So I got to add water to my cereal.
I don't
So
remember that one.
But
I've never had a breakfast one
I'm
before.
not excited about that. I have dry roasted peanuts, crackers with cheese spread, but I got the M&Ms. So everything's
Sergeant Major, let me
okay.
get those tomorrow.
Okay. No, I'm eating them. So one thing I did want to say before I start talking about uniform policy is so coming up through the military, I've always been told, hey, stay away from the Pentagon. Pentagon, that's not somewhere you want to work. And I will tell you, I wish I never listened to them people. The DMPM, the job that I'm working right now, and the amount of things that we touch, the things that we learn, this is going to make me 10 times the leader when I go to my next position. So if anybody ever has the opportunity to go work in DMPM, whether it be from the career counselor aspect, HR, the experience is so valuable for your career and how much you're going to learn. So don't take other people's experiences as your own experience. Go try it for yourself. So moving on to uniform policy. So I'm the proponent and point of contact for 4 ARs and one DAPM. So AR 670-1, which I'm sure everybody knows. I have AR 672-8, which manufactures, sale, wear, and quality control of heraldic items. I have AR 840-1, that's Department Army seals, emblems, and branch of service plaques. I have AR 840-10, which is your flags, your guidons. And then I have the DAPM 670-1, which is the wear of the uniform. So your 840-1, 672-8, and 840-10, that's where I'm dealing a lot with TIOH, which is the Institute of Heraldry. So these are the individuals that create the SSIs, so your shoulder sleeve insignia. They're the ones that create your DUIs, everything that you wear that signifies your unit. They're the ones that actually create it, and then they will take that and they'll put it into their historical files, and then it'll build that legacy, that legend for that unit, so you can always go back and look, and it's open to the public. I consolidate recommended changes and prepare for Army Uniform Board, which is the Army Uniform Board there's specific members that are voting members within it. So say we bring, I'm just going to use an example that is not real. So like say we wanted to add sunglasses to the uniform. It would go in there, there would be voting members. Let's move forward with it. Let's not. And that's how we do it. So when I talk about the form that you use, or when I talk about ETP process, and they say, hey, let's move this to AUB, that's what's going to happen. It's going to go to a voting. We have the Senior Enlisted Council, which is the SMA's council, which they'll talk about it. They'll do a voting as well for the recommendations. And then we have, of course, the recommendations that I give to your senior Army leaders, whether it be DCS G1, DMPM Sergeant Major, DMPM, which is General Rampy. There's a lot of senior leaders that see all these ETPs and these actions that come through uniform policy. I collaborate a lot with OT-JAG, which is the Army legal team. Like I said before, TIOH, CMH, OTSG, which is your Army Surgeon General. That is for very specific ETPs that come through, which ETP is the exception to policy if you don't know. All of our actions we upload into ETMS2. So I'm kind of the individual that will staff everything all the way through the final approving authority. So I will always have the status. So anytime that you want to look for the status on your ETP or the status on the changes that you're requesting for the regulation, you would reach out to me because I will always have that status. And we develop courses of actions. It might be for the SMA, DCS G1, the Assistant Secretary of the Army. So when we are creating information papers that are for something that we're trying to work towards getting approved and they need courses of action, we will develop like 3 courses of action that we could do to get to yes. That will, of course, I'll sit down with DMPM Sergeant Major. We'll try to make the best ones. And then from there, we'll start pushing it through the leadership to see if we can get to that yes. And then I have a lot of things I'm doing, just trying to kind of scratch the surface. What I want to explain is what goes into a recommendation for us. So recommendations, first thing we have to look at is how much is this costing? Because we always have to look at budget and cost. Recommendations from TIH, OTSG, the surgeon, OT-JAG, which is your legal personnel. We have to look at what they're stating is the right thing to do, and how it hinders, other organizations. So just because this is good for your organization, this ETP, how does it affect other organizations? So if we're doing something that affects individuals that are in cold weather locations and you're in Alaska, okay, is this change going to affect 10th Mountain? Is this going to affect Fort Carson? So we have to look at that. We can't just look at the small picture. We have to look at the large picture. And then another thing is, will this warrant an update to policy? Because if we're going to make this change, now we have to look at, does an Army directive have to come out? Do we have to do an ALAREC? So we have to make sure that while we're making these changes, we're also informing the force. We have to make sure everyone on the ground knows of these changes. And then types of actions that I work. So I work uniform exception to policy. So that's your exception to policy for the uniform. We work the creation of badges, tabs, and ribbons, which when I'm doing that, I'm working alongside with HRC Army Awards Branch. I work shoulder sleeve insignias, DUIs, all the different insignias, flags, guide-ons, color requests, modifications. So this might be if an organization wants an additional flag, they'll have to send an exception to policy because every unit is only authorized 1 flag. So they'll come through us to get that additional flag. And then the last thing is the development and modification of brassards. So like the CBURN and the other different ones that they were, the MPs. So we're the ones that would go through to develop them. And that's pretty much just, what I do from a basic standpoint.
You go through a lot, Sergeant Major. That's
Yes.
a lot more than I could imagine. Okay, I gotta put it out there. I was eating this while you were talking, and it's so dry. It's like really, really good. The spiced pound cake. Every time I get pound cake, I'm super pumped. But it was like I almost died.
Yeah, I'm about to crack mine open, and I'm praying that it's quite good. I might call the chaplain first. We'll see.
And then I finished heating up my main course here. I cheated and I did pound cake before the main course because it's
Yeah,
pound cake.
I'm always going to save dessert last.
I'm a little worried about those because I opened it and it was like the smell was just so it's gonna be fine. Before I try this fight, let's go ahead and move over to Master Sergeant Johnson, our command policy sergeant major, so that way you can let us know what a day in the life looks like for you, what command policy does. Give us the scoop on it, and then I'm going to mute myself while I give this a shot. What did you get?
All
What
right.
do you have? Did you get candy too? You got candy
Have
too?
Skittles. I have some nice little bread with some grape jelly. So
Oh,
yeah, over here living the life is delicious. Say
I
the
was
least. Thank
excited
you.
that I got smoked almonds and pound cake. Feeling a little cheated.
Absolutely.
All right.
So within command policy, our mission is to develop, plan, and coordinate and execute policies for personnel across the total Army. I believe you heard that. You heard that phrase before from Sergeant Major Uribe. So we cover two regulations. We got AR 600-20, which is Army Command Policy. Then we have AR 600-32, which is conduct between soldiers of different grades, which is a relatively new regulation which came out around the middle of December, which was just split out of AR 600-20. So AR 600-20 serves as the guiding document for it serves as the guiding documents for commanders and their authority throughout the Army. The regulation covers a wide range of topics. It's everything, but not limited to mission command relationships, training, and education. It really has a lot of topics in it, but some topics that may be relevant to the audience. It covers religious accommodations, it covers family care plans, corrective training, and it also covers the NCO support channel. So it covers a lot of different things, though. So what we do is we really are the policy owner of it, and we also are the personnel integrator for it, though. So we work hand in hand with the commanders out there in the field. I would say I work with everybody from the company level all the way up to the Army staff. So I work a lot with OT JAG. I work a lot with the chief of chaplains, and pretty much anybody who would have a question about any policy that would be covered in that particular regulation, that is AR 600-20. AR 632, pretty much as I said before, it is pretty much new. It's pretty much brand new on the streets. It pretty much gets after maintaining good order and discipline within the total Army. I think the cool thing about what I do is I don't really have a set thing that I go in every day and do. I would say that yesterday I answered 2 questions on family care plans. I would say today I spent most of my time staffing religious accommodations. Tomorrow I may get multiple questions on is this particular training that we're trying to incorporate, is that appropriate for our command? But it's just always something new that's always popping up, though. So you really have to be very versed in these different regulations to be able to properly advise commanders on kind of what's out there for them and kind of what's in their purview for them to execute.
Thank you, Master Sergeant Johnson. Yeah, that's actually it's more than I thought as well. It's very interesting to kind of get to peek behind the curtain of what happens with command policy. Have you tried any of your food yet? What are you doing over there?
Yeah, I'm working on it. It's hard to talk, and
That's
I
fair.
got the beef stew here, and I'm mostly excited to have the beef stew. So I want
Can
to
we
show it to
switch?
you all. As I
So
Sure.
much better
Yeah.
than mine. Mine is
Mm.
so it's better than spinach fettuccine, but it's okay. All right. So thank you, Master Sergeant Johnson. We're getting tons of questions already. So before we move into our MRE, reviews and then to our Q&A session, I want to pop into just a few really fast. So we had somebody ask, is the Army considering cutting credentialing assistance? And Sergeant Major Uribe, I think you'd be able to touch on that one for us a little bit. But what are you eating over there?
Look, you guys are sleeping, okay?
What?
I'm almost done. I done took my crackers, all right, because I got peanut butter and crackers, mixed it in, did a little bit of seance on here. This is delicious. What I'm
That's
talking
great.
about. MREs all day long. So, very, very good question. And to be quite honest, it's been some time that I've heard from the field in reference to credential assistance and tuition assistance. So let me kind of back up the clock here a little bit. If you all remember, a couple years back, we went from Go Army, specifically to Army Ignited, how we actually executed our volunteer education, which encompasses, tuition assistance and credentialing assistance. So first of all, some of the history behind credentialing assistance was the Army took a hard look at, what is it that the soldiers were really kind of able to do? What was the needs and wants? Most soldiers didn't exhibit the behavior of wanting to go to a traditional, college or a university. And then from what was happening in society is that we saw an uptick in credentialing, specifically, to get some special skill sets or certifications that would then equate to something that they would be able to do, once they, transition from the service. So credentialing assistance was kind of put together. The bill for that actually came from the TA program. So same bucket of money, they kind of split what you were able to do. They gave you thresholds, and then the Army went ahead and executed. And right off the bat, one of the highest or most popular credentialing was pilot. To go and actually learn how to be an actual pilot. So very quickly, because that's one of the most expensive credentials that are out there for service members, we started doing some analysis. COVID hit, and then during COVID, we saw a severe spike in the amount of soldiers that were actually taking tuition assistance. So usually how it works is we have a kind of an ask, like an estimate. Like, for example, we were averaging anywhere from $9 to $12 million a year on tuition assistance. We would never use the entire amount, so the Army was always kind of giving back, but it would be budgeted. But we would only get paid by like every quarter we would get a certain amount of money based on utilization. So we never hit that mark. But when COVID hit and then we had credentialing at the same time, we now ended up spending more than what was budgeted. So we ended up going back to the Army to ask for like $30 million, $40 million to cover what was already spent. And then during the COVID phase, and when we went and switched the actual system to Army Ignited, there was an iteration of where soldiers had to work with colleges individually because it took time for the Army to actually pay those institutions of higher learning, because the system was kind of taking some time to kind of go through. Now, fast forward to today. There's been several discussions, and before coming to the DMPM, my time was with the Army Material Command. I was a G1 Sergeant Major there, but I was part of what's considered the Army Volunteer Education Board. So we would meet quarterly and discuss tuition assistance, because IMCOM, which was the executive agent for this, so in other words, all the career centers that you go to, all the education centers, those are either government employees or a contract that fall within the IMCOM enterprise that now falls under Army Material Command. So we had oversight of all those, educational centers. So that was a discussion that kind of came up. And at that point in time, the former SMA, SMA Grinson was sitting those as well. And then we had representation all the way up from, from the Army staff as well. So for like ASA, MRE, and at one point we had a DoD representation on that board. And we were looking at it from a cost comparison on what is funded, because it became unforecasted requirements, and there were bills, and how we would kind of get after making sure that we still had that as an opportunity for soldiers to take part in, but we had to look at what was the return of investment, right? So if we offer this opportunity for credentialing for soldiers, is it that we're going to be able to still have the soldier in uniform for a period of time, or was it that they were getting credentialed and then they would just kind of go ahead and transfer and continue serving but not in uniform? So the first decision was to limit or cut the pilot credentialing. So that saved a huge amount of money. There was no cut to the actual, CA program. But I will tell you, it's constant conversation right now on what it is that the actual requirement needs to be from a funding perspective. And think about it this way. From an officer life cycle, they have requirements, they have educational requirements by law. So as they get managed or talent assessed into key developmental positions and they go into a professional military education standpoint, they'll have other opportunities for advanced schooling that's all tied into their actual career path. On the enlisted side, there is no educational requirement. There's no position in the Army that we have that has an educational requirement. Now, for those of us that have come up and are non-commissioned officers, you guys have heard of the promotion point worksheet. And we identify and allocate a certain amount of points for civilian education. Way back when, I used to be the chief of the list promotions branch. And that was one of the biggest areas that we used to have points associated with, because at that point, we wanted to drive behavior to get soldiers to at least take some courses, because we wanted to kind of assess their talent. But more importantly, is we wanted to use that to develop their abilities going forward. At some point, really it was around 2013, 2014, leaders made a decision to say, hey, we need to focus more on warfighting. So our basic combat skills. So we reassessed the point allocation, still drove a behavior, but most of us in service, if you didn't come into the military with a degree or some college, most of that was done on our free time. So again, what's called volunteer education. So that's where TA and now CA play a big role in our professional development, in our personal growth, and then usually ties into something that we want to do in service. So a lot of information, I think historical background gives a pretty good level of perspective. There has not been a decision to say, hey, we're going to cut this. But I would tell you, just like everything else that we do in the service, we assess on requirements. We're allotted a particular budget, and then we look to see where is the actual requirement at. So I would tell you that current leadership that just got on board, we have not had a education volunteer board here lately in some time under new leadership. So once they kind of get the opportunity to sit through that process, I'm sure that we'll have those conversations again. So again, one of the focus areas for the SMA is professionalizing the non-commissioned officer corps. All right, so that is one thing that civilian education does play a role in.
Thank you, Sergeant Major. Yeah, that was it was really insightful, and I know that everyone watching appreciates the background context into it too. All right, since we got you on the screen still, let's go ahead and hit you with your MRE review. So what we do is, before we hit our official Q&A session, we do a quick MRE review, 1 through 10, 1 being your worst, 10 being your favorite. What did you think of yours? You look like you're chowing down.
So I was hungry, because the Army took a lot out of me today. So now the Army's going to put some more calories back in my system. So from 1 to 10, I didn't get no M&Ms. I didn't get no Skittles.
I didn't either.
I did get this First Strike energy bar.
Nice.
So, I'm I'm gonna see what's going on with this, and then that way I can, do some reps and sets with Sergeant Major Basil over there. So really, oh, wait a minute, hold on a minute. Nope, it's just a high speed packaging, but it's just applesauce. So really, from just a content of like surprise or shock and awe, I would give this like a 6 out of 10. I actually kind of like this main meal, to be honest with you. It's got a little bit of spice to it, so kind of keeps your taste buds trying to figure out. So, but I just wish I had something that would kind of be. I mean, I got MRE jalapeno cashews,
Jalapeno cashews.
so I'll figure this out. So 6 out of 10, not bad.
That's a pretty good rating, Sergeant Major. I'm gonna, mine main meal, not so much. I would eat it, and it's different context when you're like in your house, right? That's just, it doesn't hit the same. If I was in the field and I was cold and I was hungry, I would eat that whole main meal because in that situation, it's not that bad. Rating it here tonight, main course, but the almonds, the pound cake, I had raspberry, I think it was raspberry applesauce. All of those like definitely made up for it. So I'm actually going to give mine, I think I'm going to do 6 out of 10 also. 6 out of 10 is pretty fair. Okay. So let's go ahead and move over to Sergeant Major Basil. Let's go ahead and do your MRE rating, and then we're going to hit you with one of the questions we got from the audience. So MRE 1 through 10.
So this is the last bite.
That's the last bite? I don't believe you.
Yeah, it is, but it's not bad. It's really good.
Okay.
But cereal smells funny. Yeah, it doesn't look that good either. But I still have the peanuts to do and the crackers and the M&Ms. You remember we used to always get told the gum had a laxative in it?
That was always, I heard that every time. So I've actually never tried it.
I was one of the people who believed it, and then I was like, it's not working. But rating wise, you said 1 to 10. I'd give it a 6. I'd give it a 6. I'd give the food, the main course is probably an 8, but the cereal, maybe a 5. Yeah, has a chemical, a little bit of taste in it. Probably good for you.
It's good for you. It'll be fine. 5 out of 10 is good. All right. Yeah. So we got a good question for you.
Uh-oh.
What is the appropriate way to request a change to the uniform policy?
Okay, so there is a DA form 2028. So when you go open up DA form 2028 at top, it'll go through the whole process. But in the end, you're just going to fill out 2028. Most important thing to put in there is currently, what does the regulation state? Your recommendation on what the regulation needs to say. And then the last thing is, what is the reasoning? What is the why to the change of the regulation? Once you fill out the 2028, you will send it to the Uniform Policy website. And I didn't talk about this earlier, but this is the website or the email, excuse me, that all of the RFIs go to. So if you send questions to this email, I try to answer within 72 hours. But if the show ends up getting me like, 60 questions, I'll have to fight through them. But my goal is within 72 hours to answer your questions. And also, this is where your ETPs go and everything. But that 2028 will come to me. We'll look at it. And when it comes time for revision or AUB, which is the Army Uniform Board, that's when we'll bring it up. And I have right now for the Army Uniform Board probably around 7 2028s that I've just gotten since January 1st of 2024.
That's actually, a lot, because that's pretty quick.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. I'm going to hit you with another one really fast that I saw in here. Is the ASUs phasing out now, and will the pinks and greens develop dress mess?
So just so you know, when there is something specific that we are working on, I can't really talk about the things that are currently being worked, whether they're ETPs, things that we're going to talk about at the Army Uniform Board. Them things I cannot talk about. What I can answer within this question is if Crystal, you shoot me email, I will get you this document. There was a memorandum that was pushed out in 2020, signed by the DCS G1, and it breaks down the specific reason why we created the AGSUs. And the main reason we created the AGSUs is because the Army service uniform, it was very formal. We didn't have a uniform for everyday wear. So that's why the AGSUs were developed. Now, within this memorandum, it does have a wear out date for all three components, which is 30 September 2027. And then after 30 September 2027, effective 1 October 2027, the ASU uniform will be known as the Army Blue uniform. So there will be more guidance that is given out to what that means. But to be short, we do not see the actual uniform going away, but is just the name will be changing to the Army Blue uniform.
Awesome. The almonds starting to hit me. It got me in the throat. So I actually, Sergeant Major, I appreciate the disclaimer with that as well. It's really important to express, there are questions that just can't be answered on this platform. And that is also a great note to put out that, what we do on this show is every question, if a soldier takes the time to come here during the live show, the hour and 10 that we're together, if they ask a question in this time frame and we just don't get to it because of time, I staff that question and I get an answer by the end of the week. Some of those questions, especially with these topics, we just cannot answer, and that's going to be part of the answer. So I think it's a great moment to go ahead and touch on that and say, some questions we just can't touch on, and we'll give you the best response we can, maybe kind of a why or something. But so I appreciate that, Sergeant Major. That was insightful, but it was also a really good point to bring up.
You're welcome.
All right, Master Sergeant Johnson, you are up. So I think we had 6 out of 10, 6 out of 10, and almost 6 out of 10, and then I got bumped down to 5 out of 10. What's your review?
Wow. It's a lot of good food over here. Got the Skittles.
Are those
got grape jelly.
the sour Skittles or are those regular?
These are sour Skittles. However, they look like they've been in this pack a little too long. They may have been stepped on. So they're a little sticky. I don't know if we can eat them without them being in one piece coming out of the packet. Wow. They're very generous, 6 out of 10. I want to say 5 out of 10. Main course, the beef stew is not what I remembered.
What?
But it is edible.
All
the other, yes, I did heat it up.
Oh wow!
And also came with some cool little Tabasco as well. So
I haven't seen one of those in forever.
It just didn't do it for me. So let's go 5 out of 10.
That's fair, because we're not cold, we're not hungry, we're not tired, so it's a little bit different.
Solid.
Yes. All right, let's hit you with, what do we got? Okay, what are the different types of religious accommodations for wear and appearance of uniforms?
Yeah, so within AR 600-20 Appendix P, it kind of gets into the details that kind of covers the different type of religious accommodations for wear and appearance of uniforms. So essentially, you got 3 types. You got religious items, modesty, and appearance and grooming. Religious items, for example, could be a necklace, can be a metal bracelet that you see soldiers wear. Those are pretty modest. So those don't actually require an actual religious accommodation. But you do have other items such as hijabs or turbans that actually do require an actual that do actually require an accommodation. But then you have modesty as well. You may have soldiers that may want to have greater coverage. So they may request to wear winter PTs, for example. And then also you have appearance and grooming, which kind of covers kind of two areas. You kind of have personnel appearance and grooming practices that kind of fall underneath 670-1, which would be beards, hijabs, and turbans. And then you also have ones that don't fall under 670-1. So for example, would be like uncut hair or like a beard that is longer than 2 inches. And then you could also have something like if soldier wants to wear something in lieu of military headgear, so like a kufi or something of that sort. So many different examples. I mean, there is a codified process that's laid out, and there's a codified process laid out in AR around 600-20 in Appendix P. That's pretty well detailed. So open to any questions anybody may have. And also going back to the document that Sergeant Major Seal was talking about, if you want to make a change, I receive many of those from the field as well. You can also send them to me as well. Just make sure you go in there and just give a good, accurate depiction of what you want to see change. And like we do read them all. So we do take them into consideration because, you know, everybody from the field, they get a chance to see everything first, and then their opinion matters. So we try to take all of that and we try to run it up the chain and can we get it updated.
Awesome. Yeah, we appreciate that. All right, we're gonna hit it with one more question, and then we're gonna wrap it up for the evening because we're getting pretty close to our hour. So we had a pretty good one here. It was, do younger soldiers have a voice on the voting for uniform board?
So there is not a voting member that is just a soldier that is brought in, but all the soldiers do have a voice. So believe it or not, a majority of ETPs, well, I won't say majority, but a large amount of ETPs that come up are started by soldiers and endorsed by their ACOM, comes through with a general that endorses it. There's not a lot of, I guess, I don't know how to say this, like there's not a lot of issues with senior leaders saying, oh, we don't want to do this just because, and we're very open to saying, hey, we'll send this back to you. Here's the feedback for the reason that we cannot move forward or the reason that we are moving forward. But we do have enlisted personnel that are part of the board, and not all of them are like sergeant majors. But I wouldn't say that we have like, you know, a specialist on the board or a private first class.
That's, you know what, that's actually fair. And I think that's such a great thought process, though, that the soldier has the ability to at least be the conversation starter. And it all starts with writing that email address that you showcased and, you know, advocating for the change that they want. So I think that is actually the perfect answer, is they can initiate.
And can I answer one more that I seen over here by Zach?
Absolutely,
it's in reference to the mechanic badge changing over to the technician badge. Yeah. So yeah, if you have been awarded the mechanic badge, yeah, the name changed to technician badge, but you are still authorized to wear the mechanic badge. So it doesn't mean that your badge is no longer authorized. So that was just an update to the AR 600-8-22, which is a HRC Army regulation, but this is something that Sergeant Major Uribe, myself, have all been talking about when this was released. Okay, awesome. All right, so we're hitting our hour mark.
And as I stated earlier, if you make it a point to be here on this show and you stream in during the hour or hour and 10 that we're here, if you put a question during that time frame and we just don't get to you, I personally will staff those questions and send you a response by the end of the week. So definitely drop those if you got a couple more minutes to go ahead and get those in there. And I owe you a response because we appreciate your support and we appreciate you joining us here this evening. We know you could have, been having dinner with your families and you took some time to hear from these amazing leaders instead. I hope that it brought some clarity and some transparency, and I hope it was enjoyable to see the faces behind the positions that you hear about. We always hear about uniform policy. We hear about command policy. There are, a few folks that hear about the DMPM. It's really interesting to get to meet the person that is part of that and that runs that. So I hope we brought that to you today. So what we're going to do really fast is we're going to go around the horn, see if anybody else has some last comments for our audience still watching, and then we'll go ahead and close it out. So Sergeant Major Uribe, we'll start with you. Do you have any final comments for the audience tonight?
Hey, so I just want to echo again, for those of you that took the time, made time to, watch us eat some delicious MREs. Mine's all gone. Okay. Thank you for what you do. For those of you that are currently in uniform service, or if you got some teammates there with you that are thinking about, joining this great profession of ours that we call Army, I want to extend my deepest appreciation and gratitude for what it is that, you want to sign up for. And for those that are wearing the uniform, really humbled to be part of the team, part of your team. And there's always some level of transparency that we can bring, to make sure that everyone really understands that there is a process behind things. Sometimes we don't understand some decisions that are made, or there's a little bit of complexity behind it. But by all means, there's a means for you all to connect with us. And we do want to hear what you have to say. So something as simple as a uniform change, where, I want to kind of add into what Eric said, Sergeant Major Basile earlier, is that structured Army Uniform Board does have membership from ACOM level leaders, G4, and part of the discussions that occur there is not just, hey, what's a good idea? It's they go through the whole sustainment enterprise from a production standpoint, from a cost analysis, from a wear piece. And there have been junior soldiers that have been part of that process when they were, pretty much identified to participate in some of the simple type of things to test. Something as like brassieres for, our women in service. Throughout commands, they were part of that testing phase and tried out different things from a cost analysis perspective. And those things inform like your annual clothing allowance. So those are things that we also take into consideration. And there's also a logistical chain that goes with that from a procurement, manufacturing, type perspective as well. And I'm sure we're all like looking forward to get like a new Army PT uniform. No, it's not going to happen, but I kind of just wanted to put that out there because every time, a couple of years go by, and it's like we want to do a new uniform. But really want to appreciate everyone's time. If you have any questions for the team here, we're always available. And as they travel, amongst your neck of the woods there, and you see them, please, feel free to ask them the questions, the hard questions. So that we can take it back in. And again, thank you for what it is that you do for our Army.
Thank you, Sergeant Major. I appreciate you being here tonight with us. Sergeant Major Basile, you got any final closing comments for the audience tonight?
Well, that was a great point the Sergeant Major had about the pilot programs, because we have done a lot of pilot programs for certain items that are being created by PEO. And allows them to have a voice in saying how we can improve things and make them better. The other thing I want to say is don't feel that the questions that you have are not good questions. Send me your questions. If you have RFIs, I'll take the time to look at them. I will get you an answer because we rather the force be educated on what is right and know what to do. If it's that you are questioning on a correction that you need to make to a soldier, I get them all the time on what is the standard for something. But I will say this, it is very important that you learn to go and look at the regulation and learn researchability, because you have to have the capabilities to look into these regulations and understand what they're saying and be able to walk up to your soldiers and say, this is what the standard is and this is what you need to be doing. But I thank everyone for the questions. Thank you, Sergeant Palmer, for allowing us to be here. And you have my email if you have any RFIs.
Awesome. Thank you, Sergeant Major. All right, Master Sergeant Johnson, any final comments to the audience this evening?
Hey, yes, I want to say thank you to Sergeant. I want to say thank you to Sergeant Palmer for putting this together. This is awesome venue for one to share information, then one also to bring people together to be able to communicate and let people know what's going on out there. I would say, kind of echoing what Sergeant Major Basile was saying, you know, please share this information, but please ask questions because we get some of the best feedback we get. It actually comes from the field. Because again, like you guys are on the front line seeing things, so and that information just helps us further out in terms of being able to being able to share the information, but also being able to for us to take an actual hard look at it and make sure that we're doing it right. Again, I want to say thank you all. If you need anything, please you can look me up on the global, and I'll be willing to answer any questions, or you can take a Teams call from me.
Awesome. Well, I mean, tonight was fantastic. I think it was jam-packed with very solid information. I think soldiers kind of got to learn a little something about every single organization we touched on. So, I mean, I couldn't be happier with how it went. And I appreciate you guys spending the evening with us so soldiers can get that opportunity from you. So with that, thank you so much for attending our episode number 2, MRE, My Retention Experience. Keep your eye out for episode number 3. We got some pretty special things in the works for that one. And again, if you drop something in the chat and we weren't able to get to it, I owe you an answer, and I will get that answer staffed and I will get it back to you. Feel free to DM the Facebook page if you have a preference on how you want me to get back to you. Otherwise, I'm just going to find your direct message on Facebook or, you know, look you up how I can. So feel free to send us a message. That kind of eases the path to getting you that answer. We appreciate you guys. Go have dinner with your families. Have a great evening, and we look forward to seeing you on our next episode. Take care.